Hey folks, this is a ton of open studio, and for anyone who is just joining and wondering what's going on, you can send tracks to me absolutely anytime, and I'll take an in-depth look at your mix and see if there's some stuff to iron out, fix, tighten up, etc., etc. And for now, until about the end of November, I'm doing this every week. So just send stuff to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. That's in the description. And I'll shoot a video on Saturdays and upload them Saturday night. And we'll do it like that. Now, after I get some reliable broadband, which is looking like end of November, then it's going to be live streamed daily, and we'll get, a little more interactive from there. So that's what we're doing right now. And if you have a buddy that you know is looking for some mixing advice, definitely send them their way. If you're on the internet and you see someone looking for some mix feedback, send them over here. The more stuff that we have to look at, the better it is for everybody. So, no gimmicks. I've got a Patreon, but really I'm doing this for, the fun of it. And, I really like interacting with everybody. And I just realized we're in kaleidoscope vision here. So, yeah, I love doing this. Full disclosure, mixing and mastering is my business. But, yeah, this is for y'all. So, let's take a look. We've got a track from Tyler and 3 things from David today. So, I'm going to pull up Tyler's email. There's a song last week, and you used a Pultec to bring out some shine from 1 to 4K. That's awesome. And then you were wondering, should you do that on a track-by-track basis or use buses? Now, that is going to depend on the mix and the track. My personal approach is I love bussing everything. I bus my buses into buses. Part of that is I'm like a modular synthesizer nerd, and you get really used to just like processing things that way. You like take a chunk of information and you shove it into something new. And that's kind of like how I approach mixing. So I bus heavily, and then I like to process in the bus. I like to process like things with each other. Sometimes you can get more out of that minimal approach. That said, you do have to take it on a case-by-case basis. So, it could be a thing where you've got like a vocal bus and you need just all of the vocals to lift. Put it on the bus and you'll probably be good. But maybe there's a lead vocal that needs to stand out over like a layered vocal that are going to the same bus, or maybe you've got like 4 guitars and you really need this one rhythm guitar to be in a different place. Then you would have to use the EQ on that individual guitar. So use your best judgment and then and shape it that way. My personal approach is I like to work like from the bus back to the track. See if I can get it in the bus and then go to the individual track if I need to. But different strokes for different folks, for sure. So that's like a philosophical question. Now, you were also having trouble with clipping once you started adding frequencies. So, boosting your EQ. So there's a couple of things at play here. First off, if you are... This is like the big thing. If you're adding like 3-4 dB on an EQ and all of a sudden you're clipping your master, then you're probably mixing too hot to start with. And you need to exercise like volume discipline from the beginning of your session. That's my first thing. Like, take a look at how hot you're mixing. Like, everything is digital. You have like infinite clean headroom, so you could be starting at you could be starting with more headroom, and then as you work through your mix, you can control your gain staging a little more throughout the whole thing. So that's just kind of a best practice moving forward. So take a look at like how hot you're mixing, like in the first stages of your mix. Now, what I would do when I run into this, because sometimes, you're working on a mix and you're really just thinking about like, I need this to sound good. And then you get to the end of everything and you've built up this mix and you're like, oh, I've only got 3 dB of headroom or something. If you have bussed everything, let me turn my phone on silent. If you've got your buses and everything is living in a bus and none of your tracks are clipping and none of your buses are clipping, and then you can also, like, there's plenty of debate if you go into a forum, like in a digital space, you can technically clip your individual tracks and your buses, and the only thing that matters is your master. And if you're in 32-bit float, then it doesn't matter at all. But personally, I like to mix with like constraints. And yeah, you can kind of like cheat around, like if you worked in 32-bit, and technically you can clip your tracks. But for just best hygiene and having a standard way of going about things, I like to just make sure that none of my individual tracks are clipping and that none of my buses are clipping. That is how I like to work. Keeps things clean. I can establish a balance and a baseline, and it's consistent from mix to mix. That's what I like to do. So, if you're not clipping your tracks and you're not clipping your buses and everything sounds how you want it to sound, but you're running low on headroom on the master, just pop like a gain plugin at the end of your chain on your bus. And then you can like do your mix with that gain. Like after every single plugin, like if everything is sounding how you want it to sound, just gain plugin at the end of your bus chains. And if the balance is where you want it, just apply the same gain to every single bus. So like minus 6 dB at the end of the chain. And it should come out into your master with more headroom, so that you can turn up the volume with something that sounds good, that has some saturation built into it in your mastering chain. And it should be the same mix, just with more headroom. That said, then you get into this thing where you've smashed down your volume and you're listening to it in a different way. And then you're like, oh, actually, I want the drums to be a little bit louder. And then you can kind of mix with the faders at that point, 1 or 2 dB there. And that's how I finalize a mix. Like in those last little adjustments, I'm like, oh, okay, a little more bass. So to bullet point everything, first off, check your gain staging in the first parts of your mix, and see if you are just not leaving yourself enough slack at the end. Start by like pull teching your buses, but also leave the very heavy possibility that you're going to need to toss it onto an individual track, case by case basis. And then you can do final gain staging at the end of your bus chains to get like if you've eaten up all of your headroom and your mix is essentially done. Okay? Okay, and we are listening to a demo. It's written by a few other people. Great. Let's take a listen.
Left me sitting in the back room at a place we used to go across the San Francisco Bay in a town called Sausalito. You left me for the young girls. You left me for the circuit. You left me for the idols and illusions, pills and all the thrills. Now you text me on the phone, telling me you're all alone. So take the ferry to Sausalito. Meet me at the loaning bar. I'll be there to greet you, where I will love you just the way you are. You can take my hand and follow me beyond the glory and all the pain. You'll be my James Dean rolling by. I'll be your Mona Lisa in disguise. It's the allegory of a lot of things, the city and the circuit, the crystal and the green. Things are not always what they seem. Now you text me on the phone, telling me you're all alone. So take the ferry to Sausalito. Meet me at the loaning bar. I'll be there to greet you, where I will love you just the way you are. Bobby will quote you by name. Hudson will sing you fields of gold, and I'll put you on a cargo ship and cruise you all around the moon. So take the ferry to Sausalito. Meet me at the loaning bar. I'll be there to greet you, where I will love you just the way you are. I'll be there to greet you, where I will love you just the way you are.
Okay. Cool track. So, really classic. I like the arrangement. I love what's happening musically. It's a good song. Um, and also, your guitar tones universally are just like top notch, fantastic guitar, like great playing, great tone. Guitars are always hitting right. So, like, awesome. Universally awesome. Now, this is a demo, so I understand that it's a demo, but I'm going to tear it down just like as if it was a final product, just to get the maximum out of this video, you know? Um, so I understand that it's a demo, but also let's get the most content out of that, out of this. So, um, first off, the offer still stands. Like, if you send me drum multi-tracks and then, the rest of the mix without drums, I'll do like a little like drum demo here and there. Which I would say is like stream policy in general. If someone wants to send like a snippet of something, I can like demo like a mix on like a little section. That way we can all learn a little bit more. And then, full disclosure, I'm not like working for free, but I'll do like demos and stuff. I love doing that. So, yeah, if you send me the drums out of context, I can just show like some drum stuff because, um, these drums just lack, like presence and punch and warmth. And like, we got to like smash them up a little bit, get some parallel compression going. EQ those toms a little bit differently, and just do just like an overall like drum, um, just get in there with a scalpel on these drums. So, if I was to just say like, what's the one thing that these drums could use, like parallel compression, smash those drums like way up so that we get some excitement on the transients, so that we get some saturation, some smear. And then those toms, like getting some top end on them, like at 7K, 8K, that'll help. So we got drum world, and that's going to change the entire mix. Like, in all honesty, like if we remix these drums, then everything is going to have to go and live somewhere else. Like, I almost always start with drums. And that's like, it's twofold. Like, first off, I have done live sound for like the last 12 years, and that's like force of habit. Like, you always, like, you build a mix from the drums up when you're working live. Like, give me some kick, give me some snare, and you balance it all there. And then it's like when I'm mixing something in the box, I kind of just imagine that everyone's on stage. Like, that's just a little like mindset thing. So I start with drums, and then also, like, bigger picture, drums are the mix, because drums go from the lowest part of the frequency spectrum to the highest. And for like a great modern sounding recording, everything needs to pocket around those drums. The drums drive the beat, they make the groove, they make your compressors pump, they make the whole song happen, in like dynamic spectrum, frequency spectrum. What we're going to get the most out of are the drums. So, drums need to have a more solid foundation from the beginning of this mix, and then everything's going to change around it. So, there's that. Like, drums got to change, just going to change the mix. So, but we're getting the most out of this. So, the other thing that I'm hearing, besides drum stuff, is we've got a lot of masking in the low, mids, and mids. And I'll show you what I mean and how to check for it and what to listen for. So I'm just going to pull up an EQ. And kind of just take chunks of information instead of the whole mix, and we'll see like where stuff is fighting. So let's do, and I'm generally when I'm checking at least an octave, so double the frequency, but 2 octaves, 3 octaves, just to get a picture of what's happening like around the mix. So let's take a look at this. Let's turn off this dip. Okay. So here are our lows. So like 50 to 200.
Just the way you are.
So your kick and bass have decent separation, but I also don't feel like the kick, this is like, there's a little bit of tub from the bass, and that kick just doesn't have any flavor, which goes back to getting some parallel compression going and just dialing in that kick to just be a little more exciting, all in all. So I'm up to 200 here, and it's like mostly bass. I'm just hearing like lots of bass, and it's just like, all in all, it's feeling tubby. So we got to compress that bass a little bit, and we need to let some other stuff happen up to 200. I'm not getting like a lot of beef out of the snare and the kick. So once again, we're still just in drum world here, and like getting those drums to slam a little bit are gonna help balance out this region. Let's go ahead, let's open up this a little bit more. Okay, this is where we're starting to get into some issues that are outside of drum world. So I'm gonna get rid of the lows. Let's just take a look. Okay, so we are in the mids, all right? 300 hertz to 1K. The vocals are incredibly masked here. All right? This region, 500 to 1K, we gotta clear this out. This is everything is kind of cramped around here. We need to carve out space, especially for the vocals. Because I mean, especially genre-wise, this is kind of ballady. The vocals are definitely very important for the track. And in this crucial region, I'm not getting much here. So let's just open this up to 2K. This is where we're starting to have the vocals sit on top. When I open it up to 4K, okay, so this is the crux of it. when I'm banding out 2K to 5K, that's where I'm like, this is where the vocals are living. And this is indicative of the overall problem on the mix. So we don't have any beef on the vocals. So we gotta get some like nice saturation, separation in the like 500 to 1K region, which is, it's tricky to do on a female vocal, but we need those fundamentals there, or else it's just going to sound like, because it's living up here, and there's just very little separation in the mid band. So dial in 500 to 1K or like 300 to 1K, make space for the vocal to live, and then you know, you're going to want to use some like analog style EQs, something that gives a little bit of grit and warmth in that region, and toss it on the vocal and let it have some beef down there. Because like if I turn, like, this is basically what the vocals sound like to me. So, you know, this is with the band pass on. And if I take this off,
So take the ferry to some. Meet me at the north. I'll be there.
it's just so much of that vocal is up there. And then even that said, it's still kind of, that vocal is still under everything up here. You know, we're hearing like the fizz of the guitar there. So this isn't a perfect method. Like you have to mix with the full everything in mind. But this is what I do when a mix just isn't hitting, and I can't put my finger on it. I go and I bandpass everything, and I see what's happening, you know, step by step in the mix, octave by octave. And what I can diagnose here is that every step of the frequency spectrum, the vocal is buried. So there is masking happening at every step of the way. The vocal doesn't like dominate anywhere on the frequency spectrum. So I would recommend making some room from 500 to 1K especially, but also like everywhere else. It's not just like, oh, make the vocal louder. It's, we need to have space for the vocal frequency wise. So yeah, that's it. That's a whole lot. So that there's just like an overall drum makeover could happen. And then listening for that masking, because it just, the vocals sounds not ideal, like within the context of the entire mix.
Now you text me on the phone.
I can hear just like pockets missing and masking, and that's, if you just dialed in that masking stuff, you know, from 300 to like 4K all in all, this mix is gonna like really lift. And even you know, even if we didn't get the drums to slam, it would be a really good mix. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, that's a lot to think about. So we'll go ahead and move on. But you know, awesome track, amazing guitar stuff, and it's also, it remains very clean, and you know, well done. There's nothing I'm nitpicking to make it like, you know, crazy good. So good work. All right, we've got 3 tracks from David. A couple of them are ones that we have listened to. So I'm going to kind of like skip through them, and I'm going to pull up David's email so that I can address stuff. Okay, so we've got Don't Start Now, and this is a master, so we're thinking about it in mastering terms. So let's take a listen.
I'm all good already, so moved on, it's scary. Aren't you the guy who tried to wanna see me dancing with somebody? About me now, walk away, you know how. Don't stop caring about me now. I'm not where you left me.
Sounds awesome. In the email, you mentioned that you gave the snare some body at 200. It sounds great. It's a great sounding snare, and the bass is nice and balanced against the vocal and the mids. I would say, like, thumbs up. This is great. So, awesome stuff. Now we've got Drunk Survival, properly mixed, ready for mastering. So let's just, give a big old broad look. Love this track. Really, you've got such a distinct style, and I love it. This is really it's drawn upon what I've come to expect from your stuff. I feel very good about this mix. I think it's very, 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 very good. I know we talked about this last time. There's kind of two snares, and I feel like this snare. That feels pretty good. And then the big, like, chorus snare. Yeah, there's nothing between like 200 and 500. There's either no snare there or it's incredibly masked by other stuff happening in the chorus. And I would want to address that. It's so close is the thing. I am definitely nitpicking. I'm talking about like if there was just a little more push and body on that chorus snare. Because such a cool chorus, such a cool section. Like, I love it so much musically, but for dance music, I want to feel the backbeat, you know? 2, 3, 4. I want to feel it, and I can definitely hear it because, like, it's all snap, and that's great. The kick, amazing kick. You've got such great separation on your kick and your bass, and the kick is driving, but it's like, I kind of want to feel that backbeat a little bit. Which, okay, I'm such a backbeat guy. And I know that this isn't the 50s. We're not like the important thing is to feel that fundamental, like for modern EDM. Absolutely. Like you've nailed the most important thing. So this is like bonus. And we don't want to change the feel too much because we're 4 on the floor. We are, we're on the beat. Bum, bum, bum. So if we just dialed this into like a rock snare, that would fundamentally change the feel, like big thumping Led Zeppelin tubby backbeat snare. No good. I feel like we just need to just split the difference a little bit. Like a little bit. And I'm hung up on this. But also, it's great. This is a great track, and I don't want to like fundamentally tell you to change it. This is totally your thing, and this is so your style. It's so cool to just see like your style develop and exist as its like own singular voice. It's very cool. So maybe play with that chorus snare. that's like all I have to say about this. It's awesome. This is a great production. It sounds really good. Okay, let's take a look at this next track. Now, this is totally new. So you were thinking like it's a movie trailer thing, and then you're like, no, it's now it's something else. So it's short. You feel like it's close to the final mix. You're wondering how to make the 808 stand out on phone speakers. Let's take a listen. You like how they sit in the mix at the moment, so do you just call it, you know? Okay, and then, you have a specific question about the snare. I'm going to listen to your reference off mic, so pardon the silence. Awesome. The reference is literally from Wicked, so it's literally a Broadway snare. So what I'm hearing on that snare is lots of body and lots of snap, which is kind of what I'm like always prescribing. It's very open and big and round, so we're talking about 200 and 1.5K, first off, frequency-wise. And then, okay, so lots of everything just failed for a second, and I had to start it all open. I'll splice this together. But basically, to catch back onto my train of thought, like, big 200, big 1.5K on the snare. So let's go ahead. Let's just take a listen to what's happening in your track. Very cool. Let's just get into the two things. So the snare, I would look for a sample with longer decay. That's the biggest difference that I'm hearing from your reference to the snare that you have right now. If you want to get like that big open Broadway snare sound, something with more of a tail is gonna get you closer, I think. That's my immediate like spot the difference take. Something just with a little bit of a longer tail. That said, you might like pull something up with a longer decay and go, oh, that doesn't fit in with like dance. Because like generally speaking, like a backbeat dance snare has a pretty tight decay because we don't want it to spill over. We want it to go pow and then leave. But that said, definitely experiment with something that hangs around a little bit longer and has like it's like the snap is decaying, not the body. That's what we're listening for. Um, hearing those snare wires. Okay. And then I mean, this is awesome. And it's a pretty solid mix. You're a bit like, I'm just like, taking a look, and you're pretty tubby at like 40. So let's see what's going on there. That might be biting you a little bit. Okay. I think you are a little heavy at like 40ish and 60ish. I would just, cut that. This is a short track. This is very aggressive. So there's definitely room to be a bit heavy down low for sure. But as far as getting like final loudness and final dynamic range, you're going to hurt yourself a little bit by having it blown up to that degree down at like 40. You're going to eat up a lot of your dynamic range there. So I would pull that back just a little bit. Like it's kind of diminishing returns by having it that aggressive down there. So take a look at your kick, take a look at your 808, and just dial them back a couple of dB at like 40, like maybe 60. As far as getting presence on like a cheap speaker with an 808 or, like bass, like how do we get that excitement in the bass? Okay, first off, you asked in the email, like, you like how this mix is. Do you just take the hit of it maybe not having like a super powerful 808 on a phone speaker? That's a super good philosophical question. Because it's kind of two things at play. First off, if you like the mix and it's your mix and it sounds good on like a good system, I would generally make the argument that we should mix for like people who care about how music sounds, okay? Like that is my very, very that's like an audio purist perspective for sure. But I believe in my heart, in my like Disney, like we can do it, audio engineer, hope that like we should be mixing for people who care about how music sounds. And that means like not for the phone, okay? Not for laptop speakers, not for the phone. Like, in a perfect world, the consumer has like a decent pair of bookshelf speakers. Okay. Uh, that said, we don't live in a perfect world, and a lot of people are going to hear your stuff because they're going to like stream it on Spotify from their phone, and that's how they're going to make their snap decision of like if this is good or not. So I approach that question from a split the difference perspective. Generally, if I'm making something myself, or if a client is like very firm in the like, and sometimes you get a client like this. They're like, I don't want it to sound good on a phone. I want it to sound good on a system, and that's what I'm going for. And then you kind of make some decisions in the mix based around that. Um, that said, on this track, there is a region. I know that you've played around with some EQ and stuff, but what I would take a look at is between like 500 and 1K, like 700 is like a prime location for this. Blow up those 808s at like 700, and then maybe 500, maybe 1K. First off, that's a great place to get presence on like on your bass to make it poke out in the mix in general. Like when you're doing like a rock mix, and maybe they've got like a fuzz bass or an aggressive bass, and they're looking to have like a bass heavy mix. 500, 700 is like a pretty good place to give your bass some love, to make it stand out on like the radio or a phone. So first off, it's a great target. Second off, your mix is a little bare in that region. So you could kind of like two birds with one stone it. This could generally use a little more mid-range information. See if the 808 does both. Maybe you'll get some more presence out of like a phone, and maybe the mix will be a little bit warmer and aggressive. So that would be what I would look for. Now, as far as how to do it, try Pultec. That'll do a little bit of saturation. That'll do a little bit of warmth, and 700. Start with that. You've played with saturation and EQ already, and give it another try. Saturation targeted into the mids is going to definitely do something. But then that said, if you do it and you don't like how it sounds, and you like it where it's just like a really, really aggressive tubby 808, then that's what it is. It's decision time at that point. Maybe how I make decisions like this, like in the mix, I'm in my environment, and if I'm like dialing in saturation or like a mid-range bump like that, I turn it up like very aggressively, 10 dB, and then until it's overwhelming, and then I back it off until you bring it up until you can hear it, and then you dial it back like 1 dB. So that kind of keeps you from overdoing moves like this. Like bring it up, and then bring it back. That's how you like mix in distortion and saturation and stuff. As a general rule, people do that all the time. So super cool track, and we'll kind of keep it to your specific questions about it. I think this is a very cool. I love all your stuff. That would be my approach on those specific questions. All right, so awesome stuff. And I will see y'all next week. Send stuff to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. Tell your buddies, tell random people on the internet. More tracks we have, the more we can do. Thank you for the folks doing the Patreon thing. That's also in the description. And I will see everybody next week. Have a good one.